We are going live. That is right. Hold on a second. Tell me if you hear this.
I hear your beautiful voice.
Oh, that wasn't Alex? Did you hear the Red 5 network thing?
Nah,
No. All right. Whatever.
I
We can go.
imagined it though. It sounded great.
It sounded great. That's
In
fantastic.
my
Hey,
head.
everybody. We are live here. Thank you guys for joining us on tonight's Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast. This is going to be a good one. Hold on a second. Welcome, everybody in the chat. And I just want to say, um, Charles, you beat Cam in the chat here. Congratulations. I think he deserves a prize of some sort.
Yeah,
That is that's
that's a
fantastic.
scuttle buddy award there. You level up when you do that.
Yeah, there you go. So, who do we have in the chat? We've got Cam, we got Charles, we got Charlie Skywalker, and he's also going to be with us on camera. But thank you guys for joining us tonight. What is today? I am like lost. It's been like Monday for the last like 2 months.
It's it's still March 2nd, I think.
Oh man, it is the
What day
end
did the
of
world end?
July.
I don't think so. I think it's still March.
Yeah, jeez. So, Brad, we've been kind of talking about this discussion for a while. Let me pop up that graphic so people know what we are going to be
Yeah,
doing
buddy.
tonight. That is right. So, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We had to postpone it time and time again, but we got to do this, man, because this is going to be a really fun discussion. All in good fun, talking about the original trilogy, the sequels to the Star Wars movie that came out back in 1977, the one, the only Empire Strikes Back, and its predecessor, The Return of the Jedi, which is an equally fantastic film, follow ups to that wonderful space opera that we all know and love. All these movies that we've been talking about for the last couple of decades. How you feeling about this little discussion there, Brad?
Well, I think Empire's going to get dethroned tonight.
All
Uh,
right.
and I think one of us may be off the show by the end of the night. We're going to get canceled or triggered or whatever the words are.
All right. Let's do our
So,
best.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So again, just a fun discussion. For a while, you guys have listened to the show. We've always talked about how we love The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, and the original Star Wars back when it was called Star Wars. But just a fun discussion about the merits of Empire and the merits of Return of the Jedi. Um, Brad, give me a little history of why you wanted to do this. And I know we talked about it in the past. We talked a little bit about what the best Star Wars movie out there is. And for the longest time, obviously, people hands down are saying Empire Strikes Back, Empire Strikes Back. But I just went shopping with the wife and I had a Star Wars t shirt on. And this kid said, Return of the Jedi. He's a Return of the Jedi guy. And I was very surprised. I was taken aback. I wanted him fired from the store that I was at. So tell me a little bit about why you feel Return of the Jedi is the film for you.
Well, the word best is, I think it's a very subjective word, but, I think most enjoyable, probably the best way to describe it. But, for the longest kind of time, Empire, it seemed like was untouchable as far as it's always been put on this pedestal as you just can't touch it as far as, Star Wars quality goes. But it was never the movie for me. I judge a movie by how often can I pop it in or watch it on TV or however it comes on, and just sit there and enjoy it. And I tell you, I was always able to do that with Return of the Jedi. I was never able to do that with Empire. For me, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes Empire seemed like it's a chore to watch. Now, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's not like a couple of the other movies, and not to that level. But I can't just pop in Empire and enjoy it. Whereas, we talk about Rogue One all the time. So Rogue One and Return of the Jedi, no matter what mood I'm in, good, bad, whatever, I can always do that, and it always make me feel better. And I think a part of it, you got just a couple years on me, but Return of the Jedi was the first one that I ever saw. So I think that's just why it just got ingrained into my subconscious, and it just takes me back, to when I was that age. So and we kind of teased this on Twitter, and we got more and more excited for this topic because I thought I was going to be on an island, Scarifall by myself as far as liking Return of the Jedi more than Empire, and it turns out that I was unknowingly speaking for a whole bunch of people who thought the same way. So, that's why we thought this conversation was going to be a fun one and maybe a necessary one.
It is funny. We started asking our Red 5 members what their thoughts are, and little by little you start seeing, in our direct message in our chat group, how, it's like Return of the Jedi, The Empire Strikes Back, and like you said, I thought it was all going to be pretty much Empire Strikes Back, but then you had a couple of Return of the Jedis, and like I said, just random people that I'm talking to, because I kind of teased the fact that we were doing this tonight, and there is a lot of love there for Return of the Jedi, and a lot of reasons that you mentioned regarding the repeatability of play. I do the same thing, but for The Empire Strikes Back. It's
right.
It's one of those movies that I can pop in, and to me, it's such a near perfect film that I enjoy it in a different way every time. Sometimes I concentrate on the performance of the actors. Sometimes I concentrate on the story, the ships, the special effects, the music. The Star Wars as a whole, I think, works on you in so many levels that you're able to kind of do that, and that's a wonderful thing. It gives additional life to the franchise, even with movies as old as Empire and Jedi, especially with guys as old as us as well. So I think it's a wonderful thing. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun discussing this film. We got a couple of friends of ours, family members of the Red 5 Network, and who are going to join us too. And there's some folks in the chat. But guys in the chat, if you guys want to join us on cam, I can send you guys the link as well. But let's bring in some other folks. Let me pop this out so we have some room here. We've got Charlie from our Red 5 family, Star Wars Through the Ages. Charlie, how's it going?
It's going absolutely fantastic.
That is great. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us, Charlie.
Oh, I couldn't miss this one. This is going to be amazing.
State your allegiance.
State your allegiance, yes.
Well, if you want my pick right off, since there's been no bank transfers or anything, no Republics or Republic credits have changed hands, I'm definitely going to have to go with Return of the Jedi.
Excellent. That's awesome. And tell me a little bit about what makes Return of the Jedi so special for you.
It's the first one that I remember seeing fully in the theater. Okay. My mom took me to see it, as she did the previous two. I remember seeing a little bits and pieces of Empire, but when I really fell in love was with Return of the Jedi. Not only I liked the pace of it better, I liked the variety of characters that they had in there. It wasn't just centrally located to just a handful of many characters. They had so many ones, from Jabba's palace to the Ewoks to just everywhere. Every time you saw a new scene, there was almost a different character. And to me, the story just flowed a little bit better in Return of the Jedi than it did in Empire.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Brad, you got anything to add to that? Charlie gave some good discussion points there.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's kind of an all-you-can-eat buffet, but everything on the buffet is good. Empire. Confession time. I like to watch the beginning of it. I love to watch the Hoth scenes, obviously. The AT-AT scenes. And then generally what I'll do is I'll cut to Cloud City. That's just me. I think those are the two most important parts, or the key parts to Empire, is the beginning of it and the end of it. And I remember, and I don't think I'm dreaming this. I remember hearing an interview with, I don't know if it was George Lucas or one of the writers for Empire. What they were working with originally was just the Yoda and Luke scenes, but when they originally wrote it, they didn't have that. It didn't take up that much time, so they had to figure out how can we make this movie last a couple hours. And that's how you got the other scenes with the asteroid field and all that with Han and Leia. And I'm pretty sure I'm not dreaming that. I don't remember who it was that was in that interview. But I think that kind of comes off in the movie, where it really does feel like a lot of those scenes in the asteroid. I mean, yeah, everybody loves a Minoc. But to me, it really seemed like those were filler scenes.
I remember that as well.
So Cybersonic 8472 had a comment regarding the I guess he's talking about the special editions, and I do think they did a really fantastic job with Empire Strikes Back, the special edition. I love the added material that they put in there, especially in Cloud City. A lot of people have problems, Brad and Charlie, with the Jabba the Hutt music scene that they added in
are we talking about originals, or are we talking about, hold on now?
No, we're talking about...
Are we talking about special editions here and everything?
At this moment, yeah, I mean, it's all on the table, brother. It's all on the table.
Oh, I have a rebuttal for that. So, I mean...
I'm glad you do. I don't.
Yes, there was some extra stuff added to Return of the Jedi, such as what they call the Jedi Rock song. But just as a cohesive unit, there's a lot of things that you just don't understand or don't come. You don't get those pieces in Empire. Like, you start off at the end of A New Hope, the Death Star explodes, and then you automatically cut to Empire, and Vader already knows that it's a Skywalker. Well, how's he know that? It's just a given. Well, there's no explanation. So there's a lot of things like that within the story of Empire that just kind of make it clunky. It doesn't flow. Is it a good movie? Absolutely, it's a good movie. But is it better than Return of the Jedi? I think it's a little lacking.
As far as the changes of the scenes, I prefer the original in all cases. I prefer the original in Jabba's palace. I mean, just because George was just chomping at the bit to use his new CGI technology on that,
sure,
and it just comes off like a bad cartoon. And apparently, I'm in the minority as far as the end of Return of the Jedi goes. I think most people prefer the new music and then the scenes across the galaxy.
Sure.
I will still take Yub Nub, 10 times out of 10 at the end of that. I think, these little murder bears just took out the Empire. Let them have their moment and celebrate with the rebels. Except I also do like Hayden's face being there. I never knew who, as a kid, I never knew who Sebastian Shaw was when his head popped up. Or when he popped up next to Yoda and Obi-Wan. I had no idea who that guy was. So I do like the addition of Hayden at the end of Return of the Jedi.
That's a fair point. Yeah. I like them both. But let's get some more comments here from the rest of our team. We've got people waiting in the green room here. Let's bring in Kev. We got Brad and
What's up,
Justice. How's it going, everybody?
It's a party now, man.
Oh, it's full house.
Excellent. Full house. But we got room for more. So, guys, Kev, let's talk a little Empire versus Jedi. What do you remember about those films, and what camp are you in? Let's start it up.
So, this my first time seeing the original trilogy was in 1995, and it was the original trilogy VHS box set before it was ever before the special editions. And as far as my opinions go with it, I'm kind of split on it because I recognize that for me, I think Empire has some of the more juicy material there, and I think that Irvin Kershner as a director was maybe a little more adept at pulling the right dialogue, getting the actors to do the dialogue in the right way that had the right dramatic heft. Having said that, I am a sucker for conclusions. No matter what the franchise, if it's a trilogy or a series of movies, I am all about the conclusions. I like the payoff. So in that sense, I'm going to have to land in the Return of the Jedi camp, because my first viewing of the original trilogy was all in one night with my father. And, you know, A New Hope grabbed my attention. Empire gave me that sense of tension that, like, okay, now I need to see how this ends. And Return of the Jedi was a incredibly gratifying payoff, right? I mean, everything from the moment that Luke catches his saber for the first time on Jabba's barge to the Battle of Endor, the dogfighting, to the final confrontation with Vader, and even with the special editions, I actually tend to really like that no moment. For me, it just adds a little more heft to that scene. So, I mean, I'm in the Return of the Jedi camp.
That's interesting. Brad, what do you think of that? Oh yeah,
I was going to say which one.
Yeah, we're going to have to be more specific.
Brad,
for me, well,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like I've never once in my life watched just one of the movies. It's always start with New Hope and then work your way across. I've never, ever just watched one over and over again. Honestly, I'm a sucker like Kevin for conclusions and everything, but I do find myself drawn more towards Empire, mostly just because I feel like I have a better understanding of it, because yes, the story does kind of start off clunky and it does continue, but I mean, if you think about it, so do all of them. But with Empire, I felt like even with the filler, it was a straight story. It was concise. I mean, it was just point A to point B, essentially.
So you admit that there's filler there. That's what I heard.
Yeah, there's filler in everything.
Yeah, and I guess that term is very subjective. I think for me, The Empire Strikes Back from beginning to end, like I was saying earlier, I can pop that film in and then just watch it in so many different ways. And honestly, you know, if you're into confession time here, then you know, it's the original trilogy for me. I can do that. So it's you know, I'll pop in Return of the Jedi, I'll pop in The Empire Strikes Back, but for me, The Empire Strikes Back is like top notch. It's like I said earlier, it's almost a very flawless film for me. Everything came together just perfectly. It was a perfect storm for this part of the trilogy, and I love it. Justice, what about you? What thoughts do you have?
Oh, I have a lot, and listening to you guys, I can more and more come into my head. I would definitely say that I lean on the Empire side. I'm definitely the youngest in this group, but I remember watching the movie in my parents' room on the VHS. That's the only room that the VHS was in. And them just like walking in and out of the room and like quoting these scenes as like they like go on to do whatever they were doing. The reason I like Empire so much is because I love villains, And in that movie and that time, like this is probably one of the like villains win. And it ends on this note where like you don't know like what's gonna happen. And like what Kev was talking about, how like Irving Kushner did a really good job of getting people to read lines. He also did a really good job of getting emotion out of the actors, which I don't know if George necessarily did in A New Hope and Return of the Jedi. But then the last thing that I really like about Empire is that you get like more, what is it called? You get more like nuggets on the Force and like what it is, and it's building that mythos, and that's why I really like Empire. Like especially in that Yoda like scene.
Yeah, definitely.
point.
So, great point. Another great point you brought up is villains. The title says it all. The Empire Strikes Back, and for me, Darth Vader is my favorite Star Wars character of all the movies. And to be able to see Darth Vader, do what he does in The Empire Strikes Back and really take control, I think for me that is a wonderful treat. Obviously, loving the fact that Darth Vader's in it and kicking butt. I wish we had more of that. And obviously, that continues in Return of the Jedi, but it's just something about Empire where, it seems like the Empire and Vader were, a couple of steps ahead of the rebels, chasing them off of Hoth. Being a kind of a behind the scenes guy also gives me so much joy watching that film. Everything from the Battle of Hoth and the asteroid and just again a perfect storm between that. What else, Brad?
I think Charlie had some.
Charlie,
you
had something?
Well, I mean, to me, what badder villain is there than Vader's boss? I mean, Palpatine is the central figure. You even see him a little bit in Empire just to give you that little tease. And you're like, man, who's this guy? And then you get that fulfillment when you finally see the Emperor in his full glory and just his cockiness, his self-assuredness that everything is going as he's foreseen it. It's just, as Vader is for you a favorite character, Palpatine for me is my favorite. It's I've always been intrigued by that character and what drives him, and you really get that payoff in Return of the Jedi.
That's interesting. How many here love the villains more than the people represented by my Brad's hat?
I mean, villains is subjective, so.
That's right.
I mean,
okay.
I find myself drawn consistently to the complexity of Vader, right? Like in Return of the Jedi, we get that payoff with Vader in his redemption, and you see the struggle, right? But you don't get that struggle, and I'm going to give it to Empire for this. You don't get that struggle without Vader in Empire, because when you get the reveal that Vader is in fact Luke's father, you start to see that his obsession with him is love. It's a twisted version of love, but it is love. It's Vader wants Luke by his side to rule the galaxy. Yes, he's opportunistic. He sees Luke as a pathway to killing the Emperor, doing what Sith do, killing their masters. But it's still rooted in the fact that, like, this is my child who I thought died with Padme. Here he is. I want my family. It's the same possessiveness that Anakin possesses. And without that setup in Empire, you don't get that payoff in Jedi when he ultimately makes the decision to chuck Palpatine down that path.
That's true.
We mentioned that Empire gives you a little more in-depth look at the Force, but what would you guys think? And this is completely subjective. Which one feels more "quote-unquote" Star Wars to you? Like, if you were to say this one feels like a Star Wars movie, which one would you say feels more Star Wars?
Jedi.
I'd say Empire. I genuinely would.
Why doppelganger? Why?
Well, because you get more of the Star Wars universe in Empire. With Jedi, like we've said, it's a movie of conclusions. Yes, you do get you get like what you want out of it. But with Empire, it's a matter of, you see your first bit of the Force more than just an old man waving his hand and mind tricking people. You get more, you just get a lot of your firsts into the universe in Empire. That, and I would say you see more of the struggle with the rebellion versus the Empire, because it is the Empire Strikes Back. So you see the rebellion on more of a back foot than you do in most other films.
Justice?
You're right.
Well, that's the whole Act 2 part of it, though, right? You always Act 2. You always the protagonists are always, up against the wall, getting their butts handed to them. I think that's the way any middle part of a trilogy should be, right? I don't know. Justice, what do you think?
I'm gonna give a cop-out answer, and I think they both feel like Star Wars. I can't really tell which one is more.
No, we don't do cop out here, brother. Ain't no cop out here.
Aside.
But you know what though, he's got a point though, because somebody in the chat just said that watching Empire and Jedi back to back, they feel like obviously an ensemble piece. It's one film, one story, and it does, and it's just a continuation of the same story, obviously. But I would have to agree with Justice. I mean, for me, they both feel like Star Wars. I'm obviously a big original trilogy lover. But Empire and Jedi, I mean, you can watch them back to back. They've got different directors, but they still feel kind of like a continuation of the story, which to me, I think I find that refreshing, and I find it a lot of fun, especially because, when I do pop in Empire, what do you want to do? I want to see what happens next, so I'll pop in Return of the Jedi. So I think that's really cool. So let me ask you this. We can discuss this next topic here. When we all saw Empire and Return of the Jedi and Star Wars, of course, for the first time, we didn't know any of the backstory. We didn't know who was who. We didn't know, Vader and Anakin's ordeal internally. When you guys see these films now, does that play a part in the enjoyment of one film versus the other? Do you guys take that new information that you didn't know initially into the viewing experience now? Charlie, what do you think about that?
Definitely at first, but I've seen them so many times now that I really see the whole big picture anytime that I watch it. I already know what's going on. There's nothing that's really hidden there anymore. It was a bit overwhelming, and I did the same thing in the sequel trilogy as well, where the first time I see it, my mind is working. All right, well, how does this fit? How does this fit? Where is it going to go from here? And the first few times where I watched it, especially after the prequel trilogy, and you get the whole story of what led up to the original trilogy, I was like, oh, wow, well, what about this? But what about that? But I could never quite really enjoy the films separately until much later. And now I can pop any of them in. I already know all the backstory. I know what's coming, what's coming later as well. And I can enjoy it just as Star Wars.
That's interesting. Yeah. What about the rest of you guys? Kev, what do you think?
I would say that, I don't, I tend not to watch individual Star Wars movies at a time. I tend to want to dive in and get the whole saga done and really immerse myself in it. And I find that every time I do that, every time I make the decision, like we're starting with episode 1 and we're working our way all the way through, all of the ancillary material that I have consumed in between those viewings absolutely color that next viewing of the saga. What comes to mind immediately is that panel from that Darth Vader comic, I think it was from 2015, where Boba Fett reveals that the guy who blew up the Death Star was named Skywalker. And you have that moment of realization with Vader, and it's a beautiful panel. And he has that moment of realization, like, that's my kid. Palpatine lied to me all these years, and he just cracks the panel of the Death Star's viewing port. Like, that moment painted Empire and Jedi in a whole different color to me. And, you know, even seeing Clone Wars season 7, it enriches your viewing of Revenge of the Sith. Seeing the 4 seasons of Rebels might enrich your viewing of Rogue One and then A New Hope. And, you know, it's hard to get away from that, especially if you voraciously consume all of that ancillary material. Ultimately, I think it is to the good. It kind of immerses you deeper into this lore and this world that is, I mean, thankfully ever growing.
Well, great feedback there. Yeah, definitely.
I think Kev nailed it there, and I think the prequels enhance both movies, but I think I'll give the edge to Return of the Jedi on this. Like, the throne room scene in Return of the Jedi, I can't watch that scene now without thinking about what's going through Vader's head the entire time. All of his screwed up choices that he made throughout the prequels, his screw ups with Padme, and then, you know, that the ultimate screw up where he made the choice to, help Palpatine kill Mace Windu instead of siding with the Jedi. And now he's in the same, they put the parallels so well. George did a great job with the parallels in those scenes. Even though, of course, Revenge of the Sith came so many years later, he built those parallels in there. And then, like, you can't see his eyes, but you can kind of see behind the mask, and you can see what he's thinking. Like, he's running. That's why he's looking back and forth the entire time. He's like, I screwed this one up. I screwed this one up. I screwed this one up. And then finally he realizes, I can finally make the right choice on this one. And yeah, some people don't like where he screams no, but I like that he's like, finally, basically the evil part of him just snaps, in a good way, where he's able to find that redemption and then do what it takes to finally take out Palpatine.
Amen.
Sure.
Couldn't agree more.
Brad, number 2, what do you think?
Well, I pretty much agree with Kevin on a lot of things with, all the ancillary stuff that you can get a hold of. And I mean, I've always been a sucker for like Legends before Disney even bought Star Wars and everything. I mean, I wanted to know. I've never watched these individually. I've always watched them, 4, 5, 6. And my wife's a purist, so she won't let me watch it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's always 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and then 7, 8, 9. But I've always, I watched these for the longest time, and then the prequels came out, and I started to wonder, where did the Republic start? Where did everything start? Like, what I wanted to know, all these in betweens, and comic books, video games, just regular books, the small little side movies that they put out. I would just immediately diverge myself into everything, wanting to know, all the background story of everything in this universe. It was a little obsessive there for a while.
Sure.
Did Charlie become one with the Force while he was away?
Oh, yeah.
He's transcended the physical plane.
Yes.
Oof.
Justice, what are your thoughts on that? Do you watch these films with new eyes, depending on what you've consumed?
Yeah, I do. I think that Star Wars has done a great job of like answering some of these questions that aren't necessarily explained in the movies, and having these books, comics, video games, whatever it be, really just like fleshes out these points that we have questions for, and like you get answers. And I think it just like it makes the Star Wars universe so much more better. So yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Excellent.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
You guys took a lot of those points, so I didn't want to rehash a lot of it, but I couldn't agree more with like what most of you guys were saying.
Not a problem. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of it, man.
Yeah. I think we should talk a couple specifics though. The lightsaber duels. Preference on that: Return of the Jedi or Empire Strikes Back?
Oh, that's going to be a hard one.
That is going to be a hard one. I think each lightsaber duel in each movie means so much. It means different things to so many people and so many characters in the film.
That's your political way of saying Return of the Jedi. I know you. You. Whenever you get fancy like that, that's when you know I'm right, and you just get all fancy with it.
No, I mean, that original, the original scene in Empire Strikes Back. Even the visuals. You tend to, think about Luke climbing the stairs and Vader waiting for him at the top of the stairs in Empire Strikes Back. The color palette, it's just a beautiful shot. They did such a fantastic scene with that. And then the lightsaber, Vader ignites it just, effortlessly, and Luke joins him. And that when that battle starts, it's father and son. It's emotional. How can you not get choked up about that? Who's going to win? What's going to happen? And I don't want to use the word because it gets tossed around a lot, but it is epic. It's iconic. And the battle in Return of the Jedi too, between Luke and Vader, and kind of Palpatine kind of trying to guide them both, or trying to manipulate that battle, and that is iconic as well for different reasons. So that definitely is a hard one because I love them both.
Well, you want to talk about iconic? If you want to put the graphic back up on the verses, the little picture you use for Return of the Jedi, it doesn't get any more iconic than that.
Right.
That shot between Luke and Vader right there.
Yeah.
That's the definition.
But that's borrowed from The Empire Strikes Back, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Fair enough. Fair point. Got you there, Brad.
But yeah, what do you guys think?
I know this is you can go.
As far as lightsaber duels, Empire didn't really have much of one. You had Luke raising his lightsaber to deflect a massive onslaught from Vader that not only included a few lightsaber chops, but these large pieces of metal that Vader was flinging at him. There wasn't much of a lightsaber battle there. Luke had really no experience with it. And then Return of the Jedi, you have this great moment where they battle, and then Luke throws the lightsaber away. And then you have, if you're not going to turn, then your sister's going to turn, I'll get her. And then you have that big momentous music swell, and then they just start going after each other with the lightsabers until Luke finally overpowers him. Talk about epic. To me, that was just absolutely amazing.
I'll give you that one. Justice, you had something to say?
Yeah, I think when it comes to choreography and the actual fight, I would say Return of the Jedi, but I really like the color blue, and I like how it looks against the red lightsaber. So that's why I like the Empire, just like that iconic look of when their blades are crossed. I just really like the blue lightsabers. That's why I know that sounds super weird, but that I just love that the blue and red. Even when in the prequels, when Anakin's fighting Count Dooku, just when you could see the color shining on each other's faces. I just I love it.
Definitely. I'm going to put up a comment here from our friend Amanda. It really is difficult to pick which one. But I think, there's a lot of emotion in both fights. Amanda picks the fighting in Return of the Jedi with more emotion. But like I said, I think both battles have a different, I guess, importance in why they're fighting.
Agreed.
And it's kind of a continuation of that fight from The Empire Strikes Back in Return of the Jedi, and it gets heightened once you realize what's at stake here.
Agreed.
One of my favorite lines in all the saga is from Empire Strikes Back when he walks in there, and Vader's just standing there, like you said, And he's like, the Force is with you, young Skywalker. But then he adds, but you are not a Jedi yet. And he just he just stomps on his soul when he says that. And I think that's the moment where Luke realizes, crap. Maybe I should have stayed on Dagobah for a little while longer and trained like they told me to. I mean, he just absolutely smashed his soul when he said that. But on the other hand, and Charlie, alluded to this as well. I think my favorite shot in all of the saga is when Luke is hiding in the shadows and half of his face is in the light and the other half is in the shadows. So you can literally see him fighting within himself, which side is going to, take over, the light or the dark. And, it, like Charlie said, it's all good until he threatened Leia going to the dark side. And that was it. He's very protective of his family, which runs in the family. But I think that shot with him in the light and the dark, I think that just epitomizes, Star Wars and the light and the dark.
Absolutely. And
But don't you
it
also
plays.
get
Go ahead, Justice.
I was gonna say, don't you also get that scene when like Vader or when Luke goes into the goes into the tree and fights Vader and like the helmet rolls off and it's in his face, like you get that darkness, like dark side of that, like in Empire as well.
Right.
I see what you're saying. I honestly, I feel it more with Return of the Jedi, in that, like, that was a pretty cool scene. That was a pretty trippy scene, and in the cave, revealing himself. But what resonates more to me personally is the shot from Return of the Jedi.
And it's so subtle. It's so subtle, and I think that's the subtlety makes it so powerful. Because before, obviously, I've seen the movie hundreds of times, but when somebody pointed out the darkness on one side and the light on the other, my mind was like blowing. I'm like, oh my God, that's right. He's fighting internally. And then when he, says, well, I'll just go find Leia, and then he just kind of goes crazy. That is really great.
I think these two specific lightsaber battles from Empire and Jedi, they function using the same thing, and that's tension, right? In Empire, there's a palpable tension in the sense that right off the bat that Vader is playing with Luke. Like, Luke is giving everything he's got just to hang with this guy who is playing with him. And that carries through the entire experience. So as the viewer, you see Luke is getting more and more battered after every successive cut back to the lightsaber fight. He is just more battered, more beat up. And that's that tension, right? But Jedi operates with a similar tension, except it's an emotional tension, because now you have the weight of Luke is fighting his father. Luke ostensibly has to make the decision, do I kill my father, or do I try to redeem him? And then you get the emotional payoff in a different way than you get in Empire. In Empire, as the viewer, when Vader reveals that he's his father, you as the viewer, you're shattered. You're like, no way. You couldn't possibly believe this. So there's that kind of emotional payoff. But by Jedi, at the end of that lightsaber fight, when Luke realizes he is walking down the same path as his father, he chops his father's hand off. His father's prone, laying there, helpless, and he realizes, I'm walking that same path. You get that emotional payoff of Luke realizing the path of the Jedi is not necessarily the warrior. Throw away the lightsaber. It's not the path of violence. And then you get the redemption of Anakin. So in terms of tension, they're very similar. But in terms of emotional payoff, I'm going to kind of squeak it out towards Jedi.
Well said. Yeah. Perfect.
Even with the big reveal, I mean, yeah, I'm personally with you. But for devil's advocate, devil being Ro in this case, even with the I am your father reveal, I mean, as far as, tension goes.
I'll freely admit that reveal being one of the greatest left turns in cinema, that's unequaled. And it like I said, it does pull an emotional weight on the audience. And I won't say it's on par with the redemption of Vader in Jedi, but I think for me, the more satisfying emotional payoff is Vader choosing to abandon the dark side and choosing choosing the light, essentially. I mean, I couldn't think of a more clever way to frame it in that moment.
Yeah, when
Right.
you have Vader, it's Luke throws it down and he turns to the Emperor and says, "No, you're wrong. I'm a Jedi just like my father." And when Palpatine says, "So be it, Jedi," and starts going after him with those bolts, and you see that. I mean, we can't see Vader's face, but I can almost feel it. And he just the glances between his master and his son, and all the turmoil and everything that is got to be going through his head at that time. Which one's he gonna pick? And then to get finally to have that moment where he picks him up and tosses him over the side. Yes, the "I'm your father" reveal was huge, but that turn and that choice had so much weight behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely astounding.
Absolutely, especially when you think about like at the time of Return of the Jedi, Vader was one of the most I mean, he still is. He's one of the most iconic villains. Like prior to Jedi in that third act, if you saw Darth Vader, that he was synonymous with bad guy, and to turn that on its head was, I mean, it was a masterstroke of genius. Actually, I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, that was brilliance because it would entirely subvert the audience's expectations at that point. Right. I mean, if you go into these movies thinking that this guy's a villain, he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's Luke's father, but he's still bad. I mean, how many people, I mean, I can't speak for anybody because I wasn't alive at the time, but I mean, how many people went into the first viewing of Return of the Jedi thinking that Vader was going to be redeemed?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask that
Right.
question again as devil's advocate. I think that's actually one of the bigger criticisms of Return of the Jedi was its predictability.
Really?
Did for Charlie and Roe, us older guys, did you guys find it predictable? Did you see that outcome? Yeah, that's one of the biggest criticisms. Like, we knew what was going to happen. Yeah, of course he's his father. Now this is all, I don't know, this is all in retrospect maybe, but they make it sound like at that time, 1983, that pretty much it was utterly predictable on how it was going to start and how it was going to finish. I don't know if you guys thought that way, if you personally thought it was predictable, and whether you thought the general public thought it was predictable.
And I think it also comes to play that, it was the third one in a trilogy where, at the time, nobody knew that there was going to be any more movies at all. So it had to conclude in some way. And the redemption arc, it's not new to Star Wars, obviously. It wasn't new to film at the time, but yeah, there had to have been a payoff, and I think redemption was kind of the logical conclusion to that, especially for films like this, and especially for us for this trilogy where that was it. We weren't going to see anymore. After Return of the Jedi, that no more Star Wars. That George had no plans, and that was it. So it had to. I think it had to end the way it ended, and expectations subverted or not, but there you go.
Well, thank goodness
Yeah.
it didn't
Big
end.
Charlie.
And I agree. Even as a young kid, I knew that it was going to end. Good seems to always win, so I knew there was going to be something to happen where where the good side would win. But Luke wasn't the only person on the good side. So was he going to have to sacrifice himself in order to? I mean, I had no idea how it was going to play out. And I think that's what really sucked me into that turmoil. Was he knew that there's good in him, I feel it, but was that going to be enough, or is it going to be something else that because of his sacrifice will give the other characters more to go on where they'll finally triumph?
Sure.
Yeah, it could have conceivably gone that way.
Justice, I can feel you thinking.
Oh no, the whole time I was just thinking like maybe these guys on the Return of the Jedi side will sway my opinion, and I love being able to just enjoy listening to other people talk about Star Wars.
Has it worked yet? Has it worked yet?
I will say that you guys have made me want to go and watch Return of the Jedi after this podcast.
Yes,
Awesome.
do it. You know, I think let's talk about moments in these films. There are a lot of small moments that mean a lot, and I'll give Return of the Jedi this because this is the first thing that I thought of when Luke turns himself in to Vader, and they have that discussion on the gantry. That is like one of the most amazing conversations in this trilogy, because there's a lot of revelation there, and there's a lot of things, there's a lot of material there too that will, I guess for a young mind, you know, you're trying to figure out like what is Vader talking about, what is Luke talking about? Is Vader redeemable? And at that point, you start to wonder. Is Vader coming back from being this evil, this bad guy? I think moments like that in Return of the Jedi are great. And what do you guys think? What are your favorite moments of the two films?
Let's let Brad have the first shot at this one.
So,
Get it, boy.
So for Empire Strikes Back, I would have to say it would have to be the time where in the early beginning on Hoth, when Han has decided that, you know, instead of leaving and paying off Jabba the Hutt, he's instead decided to go and save Luke from this ice storm after he got trapped out there. He decides to rescue Leia from the Empire. You know, a character that you really didn't expect to see any selflessness from in the first movie, and he only had that one moment at the end. And then you start up this next movie, and he's almost on that same path of selflessness or selfishness. And then for him to just turn right back around and make that same choice of, you know, help the rebellion, help Leia, help Luke. That's honestly my favorite part, just because it shows I'm always an underdog guy. But Return of the Jedi, my favorite part, honestly, would be the conversation on the gantry. That is, again, one of the greatest conversations in the trilogy as a whole, honestly. Maybe even more than that.
I agree.
And you know, the thing about that scene is Luke has, the way I always thought, Luke has the audacity in that scene. He's trying to use the Force to influence Vader. You know, you can see he's literally trying to Jedi mind trick Vader. Like he's speaking truth there, but you can see he's using the Force to try to influence. He's like, that's why you didn't turn me in before. That's why you're not going to turn me in now. But I always looked at that as he's nudging him with the Force, and that takes some testicular fortitude to try to
stones on that kid.
To pull that off to the Dark Lord of the Sith. Obviously, it doesn't work. It gets rejected summarily by Vader. But I'll be damned if he's not trying though.
I think he was playing chicken, because you can tell when he turns around and they're both facing the camera, and Vader looks down at the lightsaber and turns it on. You can see Luke just soil himself, because he doesn't know what's going to happen. So I think he was, maybe he was playing a little chicken, because obviously Vader was, demonstrated his powers. So, but yeah, he did have the testicular fortitude to at least, go in and say, let's give this a try.
Agreed.
Well, but I mean, in Empire, I mean, Vader already knew the stones on Luke when, this boy who is not a Jedi yet would walk up the stairs and ignite a lightsaber to, try and take him on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it is his kid.
Yeah.
Who knew?
It's true.
Yeah, well, that's my kid. That tracks. This is the same guy that like ran at Count Dooku like I got this guy. I got him. No worries. You guys hang back. I got this. Of course Luke would be doing the same thing.
And it never turns out well for either one of them.
No. They always bite off more than they can chew, them Skywalkers.
Yeah, they're slow learners.
Yeah.
At least the men
Just-
are.
Yeah.
What's up?
True. Justice, what do you think? What are some of the moments that come to mind on either film?
You guys were like giving like really like deep and emotional like answers and like super like good answers, and I'm like pretty tired here, and I'm just like, oh, I like these like really like I like skulls and I like bad guys. So like from Empire, my favorite scene is definitely when he goes in the cave and like cuts off Vader's head, and then I really love it when Vader is getting electrocuted and he's able to overcome that and throw off Palpatine, and like you get to see the bolts going through his suit, and like you see his skull. Like that always like stuck in my mind. Like I love that. I even have a Funko Pop of it. Like I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know. It's
That's a good one.
That's that scene from Return of the Jedi.
that's valid.
You act like there's something wrong with those answers. Those are
Oh,
actually
man.
legitimate answers.
You guys are talking about like all the emotions and all this, and like I just like the cool skull things.
Hey man, we're all here for the whiz bang, man.
Yeah, there's no wrong answers.
Exactly.
So let's see what other elements of both films do you guys feel strongly about? You guys want to talk about music and themes? What about the
How about,
emotional?
I was going to say, how about actor's performance? Which one do you think Mark Hamill did better in, Empire or Return of the Jedi?
That is a
Jedi.
tough one. That's
mean,
a
he
tough
didn't-
one.
He doesn't have a face really in Return of the Empire Strikes Back, so I would go with Return of the Jedi.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one because I think I'm gonna have to go back to my original answer. I think that Empire, I'm gonna have to give it to Empire. As much as I love Jedi, I'm gonna have to give it to Empire because again, I think Irvin Kershner was really, really adept at pulling the right takes out of these actors. And I think that Mark Hamill played not only the brash rebellion leader, but also the struggling student. Luke, by the time Luke gets to Dagobah to train under Yoda, he's probably a little more confident than he should be. He's obviously naturally talented. He's picked up things here and there, but Yoda puts him in his place. You're going to have to unlearn what you've learned. And I think Mark Hamill played that progression beautifully. Not to say that his performance in Return of the Jedi wasn't great either. He has this air of confidence to him that is just, it's spellbinding. But with Empire, I'm going to give it this. A lot of it has been made of this, and it's a valid point. He spent the majority of that movie playing against a puppet. Like that cannot be understated, and that film does not work if those scenes are not executed perfectly. So as much as I love Jedi, I'm going to have to give Hamill's performance in Empire.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm still going to go with Jedi. In Empire, he still is young. He just is really too gung ho and I'm going to do what I want anyway. I'm going to they need me. I want to go off and do it, and just shows that naive side of him. And in Return of the Jedi, you just see that complete transformation where he has all that confidence. He tells Han, "Don't worry, I got this. Got this under control." His ability to to talk to Vader the way that he does, to confront the Emperor with such brashness, and where he is just throwing his words back at him, and but you also get that tenderness when he's talking with Leia. You get the confusion when he's talking with Ben after Yoda passes, and it's you get a full whole dimensional scope in Return of the Jedi, and it's just not quite there in Empire. It's good, but it's just not quite there.
Fair point.
Yeah, I don't know what Mark Hamill. I mean, I guess I do. I mean, the proof is in the movie. I mean, Kev, you make some valid points, but I feel like Mark Hamill learned something in those 3 years between Empire and Return of the Jedi, and that's the art of the subtle look. If you watch Return of the Jedi closely, look at Luke's face the entire time. He's making these subtle looks the entire time. Whether he's talking to Leia, to Han, to Vader, or to the Emperor, like there at the end, he's got these just very subtle looks, and he just sells it. Like you can see his maturation, like as both as a character as Luke and Mark Hamill as an actor, and he just that scene, the throne room scene where he says, soon I'll be dead. He just gives a little look over to the side panel, referencing that the ships are about to show up. And I don't think he gives all those subtle looks in Empire, but that really sells him as a character. And what I really like about Return of the Jedi is you can tell that he's teetering on the dark side from the very beginning, from the moment he walks into Jabba's palace and he force chokes the Gamorrean guards, and then he outright threatens Jabba. Luke does a good job of walking that line, or Mark really does a good job of walking that line of he could step over at any point, and I think he really learned a lot, in those 3 years between recording Empire and Return of the Jedi.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, do you guys think that's a director's direction? Do you guys think that's
That's
I
Mark.
guess
That is
deliberate?
that is 100% Mark understanding his character, I think.
I think what would that be? 6 years into playing that character.
Right.
I think anytime an actor hangs with a character that long, they start to embody things that are, Brad said it perfectly, the subtleties. And you see that anytime you have an actor that sticks with a franchise for any amount of time. So I do think the vast majority of that is Mark Hamill and him just understanding how to play that character and how to play that evolution. I would give some credit to the directors, because the director is the guy behind the camera and he's the one seeing how does this interact and how does this play with that. I'll still edge it out towards Mark, but the director's got to get just a skosh of props there.
And it is an amazing thing to see the progression of Mark Hamill's acting skills, because I think as much as I am not a fan of The Last Jedi, I think his performance in that film was amazing. There was so much emotion there. There was so much there that that was really great. And to be able to see him go through those changes from the beginning is just an amazing thing. For us as fans, for us as moviegoers, I think it's really cool.
Absolutely. I think that, you bring up The Last Jedi and you're right on. Mark Hamill's, his job in that movie is made all the more impressive by the fact that, he didn't agree with the material. He had a fundamental disagreement with the material. But like a professional, not only did he execute it properly, he did it in a way that you believed him. He brought truth to the performance. So, even if you're not a fan of the movie, even if you disagree with that movie, you've got to give Mark Hamill props, because he brought a level of truth to Luke Skywalker that, whether you like it or not, you have to admire that. Like, the way he executed that performance is flawless.
Absolutely.
Carrie Fisher, however, I think Carrie Fisher, I think you have to give it to Empire as far as her performance goes.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No argument there. No
She
argument
probably
there.
wasn't doing as much cocaine at that time anyway.
Or just the right amount. The right amount.
You try to fit into that bikini and see how much cocaine you're doing, all right? She had to fit into that thing.
But, getting back to actors' performances, I think one of the things that I love about The Empire Strikes Back is everybody's performance in that film, to me, is solid, solid, solid. from getting Billy D. Williams in there and getting bringing our cast back. They worked very well together, and even though their stories sometimes were separate, but I think everybody brings such a seriousness. And Brad, you and I have talked about this on the Scare of Scuttlebutt. As far as the original trilogy, when they take the material seriously, when they make you believe as a viewer that these things are actually happening to these characters, and it's a serious thing. There are consequences. There are they take it serious. Personally, and you guys will laugh, but I have a problem when there's comedy in sci-fi or too much comedy in sci-fi. I think The Empire Strikes Back is, to me, it's like a perfect mix of, wait, this is like some real shit. Stuff is happening here. Characters aren't being tickled by trees on rocks. So that is, to me, that I have a big problem with that. But it was the perfect mix. All the actors brought their A game to that film. And, again, kudos to the actors, but kudos to Irving Kershner for being able to kind of tease that out. And I'm glad. I'm wondering what kind of film The Empire Strikes Back would have been if George took the reins on directing, especially with the caliber of performances that came about for The Empire Strikes Back. What do you guys think of that?
There definitely was a huge turnaround, I guess, in attitude and approach to acting in Empire, especially compared to the original Star Wars: A New Hope. The crew, once Empire hit, believed in the movie. The cast believed in a movie. Now it's not just a movie that's it's sci-fi based and kind of fantasy based, and nobody talks like this, and what is this that they're doing? Everyone is fully invested. Everyone fully believes in it, and it really took on that seriousness of it, and the tone was completely different even than the serious parts of A New Hope. There's just such an added layer that was brought in Empire, and I would have to give the overall acting to Empire rather than Return of the Jedi. I think Return of the Jedi just was more of a, I think the story was a little bit more complete, but as far as the acting, they could finally get back into having a little bit more fun with the story and their characters than they did in Empire, and a whole lot more invested than they did in A New Hope.
Brad, what do you think?
Well, for something like acting chops, I can't really take anything away from either of these because both of these movies gave us some of the greatest moments we can think of. We already talked about the gantry scene in Return of the Jedi. We got there's the scene on Empire when Luke is leaving Dagobah, and he's talking to Yoda and Ben about leaving his friends to die. In Empire, there's also the moments when Lando finally comes to talk to Han after betraying him. Even whether it was George or not, you got some great moments emotionally in both of these movies. I honestly can't take anything away from either one.
Yeah, good observations.
Yeah, collectively, I have to give it to Empire on this one. You can tell for Empire, they were definitely all in on that one. As Charlie was saying, they were completely invested in that movie. By the time you got to Return of the Jedi, yes, Carrie definitely had her own a lot of personal issues at that time. So that kind of took away from her ability to perform as an actor. Harrison Ford wanted Han Solo to die at the end of Empire Strikes Back because he was already working on, he'd already been working on Indiana Jones, as well as, his notoriety had just skyrocketed from all that. So, you can tell that he wasn't as much as, into the character of Han Solo as he was in 4 and 5. So collectively, yeah, I would definitely give that to Empire.
Yeah, I think actually the comedy that Roe brought up with Empire, the way that I think the balance that it does strike, I'm going to give it to Harrison Ford because it's Harrison Ford's delivery of certain lines as
Yes.
Han Solo that
Right.
sells that kind of that natural feeling of it, right? It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like insert yuck yuck here. It was a very natural way of delivering the lines that really only Harrison Ford could do when he's invested in a character. You see him anytime he plays Indy, that's the way he plays it because he's entirely invested in what he's doing. So I think that goes to Harrison Ford.
Yeah, even the dark side was used as comedy in Empire Strikes Back in a very subtle way. When Vader chokes out Ozzel, he's basically he's skyping with Piet the entire time while Ozzel's getting choked out, and the looks on Piet's face while he's trying to focus on Vader while he's looking at Ozzel getting choked out at the same time. That's hilarious. And of course, he just falls and they carry him away at the end. That was I don't know. I don't know who, if that's Irvin or George or a collective. I don't know how they came up with that, but I always think that scene's hilarious.
Yeah, it was a rough time to be an Imperial officer, man.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, never be too hasty with your status reports. All right, give it another half hour before you give your status report to Vader. It's not going to go well.
Yeah. I don't think I'd want to be posted on a Star Destroyer. Give me a nice outpost out of the middle of nowhere where I'm not going to get force choked for, misspelling something in my report.
Sunny Beach.
Yep. Sunny
beaches of Scarif. There you go.
There you go. I do love me a beach, man. So, it's funny. You brought up, would Empire have been different with George at the helm as opposed to Irvin Kershner? And I think George, if he would have done Empire, because if you look at the pacing of A New Hope, it's just boom, 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 boom. It's just one thing after another. And George is famous on set for saying, do it again, but faster, right? I don't know if George would have directed Empire. I don't know if it would have been paced correctly for some of those iconic moments to hit as hard as they did, right? I think Empire functions the way it does because it's allowed to breathe. And I think that's some of the, I think that's when Star Wars actually, for me, it functions the best when it's allowed to slow down and breathe a little bit and kind of explore the moments that it's going on, as opposed to next scene, next scene, next scene, next scene. Ultimately, I think it was the best decision for George to step away as director and give that to Irvin Kershner, because it was probably some of the director's decision to let these scenes breathe a little more, let these things get flushed out a little more, let it slow down, and let the weight hit, as opposed to here's the flash and flash and flash.
And, a lot of people, we're talking about scenes that are filler or filler scenes and things like that. But the scenes in Empire Strikes Back that allow the rest of the film to breathe are nowhere near filler scenes. These are scenes that are important. I mean, scenes that slow down the action. Vader talking to Luke in Return of the Jedi. When Leia and Han are on Cloud City right before they meet Vader in the at dinner time, whatever. But these scenes are great because you're right. They allow the rest of the film to breathe and to catch your breath. And not only that, visually, when you're on Cloud City, when you're watching these scenes, you also want to kind of like look around and look at the production design. It's a film that is. How many locations do we have? We've got Hoth, we've got Cloud City, we've got obviously the locations in on the Star Destroyer. We've got Dagobah. So it's we're going to a lot of places, and I for one love just sitting back and just kind of like watching the environment and watching the artwork that these people behind the scenes got to create for us. So I love scenes that are slowed down. I think you can kind of tell George Lucas's pacing issue, especially in Episode 1. especially towards the end. You got so many things going on. You got the battle outside with the Gungans. You got Obi-Wan chasing Darth Maul, and all those things cut back and forth. I remember, I think there was an interview back then where Lucas was quoted as saying, I might have screwed up with the pacing at the end there. So you're right. I'm glad that he kind of stepped back and gave Kirshner the go ahead, and good stuff right there.
Okay, so two things here, Ro. Number one, how come you get a hashtag next to your name, and I don't have a hashtag next to my name? And because I know you can make that happen. And number two, I'm gonna throw this at you, and you're gonna hate me for it. How is that? And this is a serious question. How is that different than The Last Jedi, with all the scenes, the Canto Bight scenes and stuff like that? How are the scenes in Empire in the middle 2/3 of Empire different than the middle 2/3 of The Last Jedi?
Ooh, I got stuff for that.
I just kicked him off.
See what happens? Do you see what happens, Larry?
I just kick you off, Brad. I don't care.
Well, you heard the question. Question's been entered. Justice, you had something for that?
I don't know if this answers your question. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ro. But I think the difference is that when Kirshner is doing the directing, it's still George, like kind of like with his over his back, like making sure like his story is being told. Whereas like those moments in TLJ are all Ryan's, and it's not JJ being like, hey, this is like what my vision was. So like that's the difference, and I think that's why one worked and one didn't. I don't know if that's answering your question or not, but that's where like I thought when you asked that.
That's a fair point. I think it's all in perception as well. I think it's that if you're not speaking towards The Last Jedi, if you're not invested in Finn or Rose as characters, obviously like those moments are going to be like, whatever. I know for me, when I watched The Last Jedi in the theaters, I liked what I saw, but I was much more into what's going on with Rey and Luke, right? Like that was give me more of that. That's what I'm interested in. Let's go. I do think it ultimately does boil down to like what you're invested in as a viewer. One person's filler is going to be like, oh, well, those asteroid scenes, that's my favorite. I love that stuff. Ultimately I think it's a perception thing.
Yeah, it's very subjective. One's man's treasure is another man's garbage. That's where we get that saying from. And I don't know. We do. Obviously, we've talked a lot about. People have talked a lot on Twitter about the Canto Bight scenes and what they bring to the table. I don't know. I mean, it says Team Empire Strikes Back on my icon there for a reason. So.
I mean, for me, if I have to defend the Canto Bight scenes, I will. I'll die on that hill.
Alone.
Yes, I'll be the lone guy that's going to die on this hill. I like the complexity they add to the state of the galaxy. There's that commentary on avarice and excess. While there's so many people in the galaxy that have so little, and that's an interesting commentary for me as a viewer. I kind of appreciate that. I do like what the character DJ added in the sense that he's ambiguous. He doesn't have any allegiance, and he points out to Finn that I'm not the only ambiguous one in this galaxy. There's people playing both sides here. You hint at like the military-industrial complex through that scene. So I mean, it adds something. Is it absolutely essential to what you take away from that movie? Probably not.
I would honestly say, like, for Canto Bight, it's up until that point, you always have these characters that you're either, okay, the universe is white, the universe is black. Canto Bight almost points out and brings to light the fact that it's not. There is massive gray areas in everything with this universe.
Yeah.
Fair
dinkum, Brad.
That was already going on in the Clone Wars and other TV shows and whatnot. They just made it like bit on the big picture, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does. It does make sense.
For people who don't watch like the Clone Wars or Rebels or something, it's something for them to kind of get a grasp of the universe with.
Right.
I think we just talked about this as far as Rogue One goes. I think Rogue One does that much better in a more subtle way to show that things are not exactly as we might think. Like there is a dark side, if you will, to the rebellion, being down for assassination if the opportunity presents itself. I think it may have been a little bit too overt with Canto Bight myself, but Kev, I think you nailed it though, and I was hoping nobody would go there, but you did directly, and that's with character investment. And I just did not have the character investment with Finn and Rose, but you absolutely have that character investment with Leia, and with Han, and even with the droids and everything. So I think that's the difference between those scenes in the asteroids and in Canto Bight.
Right. And I think that like it speaks to what I think is a common thread with the Disney era of Star Wars films, is that they are working towards like trusting the audience that they're going to be able to grasp more complex themes and more complex things. It doesn't have to be so black and white. We can insert a little gray area there. The audience is sharp enough to pick up on it. Rogue One, I mean, you nailed it. It does that brilliantly from start to finish. It really does trust the audience that like you guys can handle some more stuff. So I mean, I think you're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
Can I just
So
talk about? Can I bring up
Go
one
ahead.
thing? Going back to the George and him directing Empire. I don't know if you guys know this, but like Kirshner was George's teacher in film school. So and he knew that like I was listening to an interview recently about it and how like he knew that he could not direct this because like to make it that good because sequels weren't a big thing. So that's why he went to Kushner, because his whole thing was all about pulling out emotion, which is some of the biggest scenes from Empire.
I did not know that.
Yeah, sci-fi. That wasn't even his genre. That's not what he was known for. He was more of a romantic comedy. I think was his niche.
Yeah.
But it was bringing out those emotions. How George knew that was going to work with this, I don't know, but it totally did.
And he,
I mean, I
like,
think
it's
Go
crazy
ahead.
that he like left the like Directors Guild and all that stuff. And like I think you guys were talking about the whole why the actors invested so much. It's because I think they also felt the pressure of like they didn't have anyone like on their side. It was George like funding this whole thing, so like they like really put it on their back to make sure that like this movie was a big hit and a big success. And I think that also played a factor into it.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if coach is all in, the team's going to be all in. That's a good point.
Absolutely. I mean, George Lucas has proven time and time and again that he's got the right instincts. Sometimes you can have arguments as like, does he stick the landing always? Maybe not. Depends on what your perception is. But his instincts are second to none. Like he knew this was going to be successful before anyone else did. The dude's instincts are untouchable in that regard.
Yeah, one of the things that I love about George's way of doing stuff, and I think he gets a lot of flack for this, playing in this digital play lot that he created, with the technology of creating these films. Each one kind of pushed the filmmaking envelope a little further. Now we've got, the technology from The Mandalorian that we are enjoying, but it's something that, George was talking about in the mid 90s, regarding, being able to produce these, Star Wars level, projects on the small screen, and now we have it. So, like I said, I think he gets a lot of flack for the way he creates these films. And I know, like or not like his directorial style, I think, for all the faults that he has for his directing style, I give him a pass because, he's this world builder, he's this universe builder that gave us so much. Not only, up there on the silver screen with the characters and the worlds that he created, but behind the scenes as well, for us to be able to enjoy other films and other genres with the technology that Star Wars built. And I think for me that is a legacy that he'll forever be known for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I put George Lucas up on the level of like a Tolkien kind of person. Tolkien gets a lot of criticism for the way he writes. Like, he will describe in detail a leaf, right? And it will be like 58 pages of look at this tree and how awesome this tree is in great detail. So you can have those criticisms, but like much like Tolkien, George gave us this world, and it's incredibly rich. And it's not only rich, he set it up in such a way that it can be consistently added to all the time. So yeah, I have to agree. Whatever your criticisms of him may be, I mean, much like Tolkien, he changed things. He set fictional narratives on a different path. He's trailblazed technology. I mean, you name it. This guy he will never be lost to history, right? Like, I mean, whatever your opinions are, good, bad, or indifferent, he's here to stay.
Absolutely.
Well, I even think that if he had because if you watch that Mando behind the scenes documentary and they show him what's the big room that they go into,
the volume,
he would have loved to play with that, and he would have made some amazing Star Wars content if he had that when he was making the prequels.
Yeah, absolutely.
The prequels would have been untouchable had he had the volume. Had he had that technology, the prequels would have been up. I think they would have been 100 times better than what they were, if just for the look that it would have had.
Yeah,
I mean, absolutely. I mean, think about the potential of the volume, not only in Star Wars television but in film. I mean, like how much is this going to streamline the production process to the point where they can keep pumping out stuff. I mean, I know they still have a 2-year schedule with the movies every 2 years. But I mean, in terms of Star Wars series and content, because of this technological advancement that was born, let's call it what it is, was born out of George Lucas's use of green screen on the prequels. Because of that, we are now never going to be want for content on a certain time schedule, right? Like we're gonna get it pretty consistently because of that. And if you didn't have George Lucas blazing that trail, I mean, we wouldn't be here.
Absolutely. Hooah!
So I think it comes down to you can pop in a DVD right now. We'll say we're all using DVDs again, or whichever your method of watching is. You can pop in a DVD right now. Is it going to be Empire Strikes Back, or is it going to be Return of the Jedi? Which one is it going to be, and why? How about Brad? You want to start us off?
It's still got to be Empire Strikes Back, just because it's what you guys just talked about, the visual effects and everything. Hoth Battle is probably one of the greatest examples of that CGI, that thing that was born of this massive thing that's giving us more and more content. I think that was done masterfully. Even any shortcomings on that battle, you really can't think of any, honestly.
Justice?
Is Episode 3 an acceptable answer?
Your choices are 5 or 6.
No, I'd probably. I'm still siding with Empire, but I think if I was going to watch a movie, it'd be Return of the Jedi, just because I think I haven't seen that one in a long time, and the way you guys are talking about it is firing me up to watch it.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Okay, so I'm going to go with Jedi. I'm going to stay on the path here. I'm going to go with Jedi for 2 reasons. And it's impossible for me to divorce it from my feelings as a child watching it. And it's for 2 reasons. The scene where Luke catches his saber and sparks it up for the first time on Jabba's barge. I mean, that's elation persona. That's elation in celluloid right there. And then the Battle of Endor, the dogfighting. Growing up, my father would incessantly watch Top Gun all the time. So I was always inundated with dogfights. So seeing Endor on that scale, it's eye candy, right? It's just constant stimulation. And I would, for those 2 reasons, Jedi.
Well, you guys know how I fall, and also I can speak for Charlie. Charlie was Team Jedi, and he remains that way. Obviously, for me, it's Jedi, simply for the fact I truly believe it has everything. It has everything that you could want from this genre of movie, from start to finish. It's got the characters, it's got the visual effects, it's got the music, it's got everything, and it's just one fun scene from one to the next, from the very first scene where the TIE fighters coming out of the Star Destroyer to the Death Star, to ending on the Death Star, start to finish. It's just such a fun movie, jam packed, loaded with everything, and I can't be mad by the time I get done with this movie. So it's too much fun. So that's why I like Jedi and Roe. I guess I'll let you have the last statement there.
Well, talking tonight with you guys, obviously, it's one of those things where I don't go to bed till like 3 a.m. usually, just doing stuff, whatever. So I'll probably pop in the entire original trilogy and go through that. But Empire holds a special place in my heart, and I was around. I watched Star Wars when I was 7 years old in the theater. Obviously, that also holds a special place in my heart. But Empire, as a young person, as someone who was starting to get in touch with emotion and feeling, I think Empire does a lot there for me personally. Performance, music, moments. There is, and obviously because of the fact that Darth Vader is my number one favorite character in the saga, this is where he really, kicks some ass, and I love seeing that. So for that, and I might read another list of reasons, Empire continues to be, for me, one of the best Star Wars films out there. Second to only, probably, I think I've got number 2 on my roster is Rogue One. Yeah, Empire Strikes Back is top notch. But I think I would enjoy watching Empire and Jedi back to back because of our discussion as well. So thank you guys for joining us. Brad, any final thoughts here?
Yeah, just a side note that there's been a lot of talk of what order to watch the movies in. And the official order, just so everybody's paying attention, this is if you want to watch all the movies. I can tell you which ones you can subtract if you don't want to watch them. But if you want to watch every single Star Wars movie, the correct order in which to watch them is Solo, Rogue One, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's Solo.
Did you guys write that down?
Solo, Rogue One, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you start with you start with the height. Number 1, Solo looks great. So, and this is especially if you have someone that's not familiar with the Star Wars universe, right? So Solo looks great. It's visually stunning. It's a fun movie. There are no Jedi, right? There's only the Empire. So you get that, and then you get that goes right into Rogue One a few years later, which obviously goes into 4 and 5, right? You see, as Rose said, you see Darth Vader simply as this badass, right? And then that goes to the cliffhanger at the end of Episode 5, with, hey, is this guy his father? And then you go back and you watch 1, 2, and 3 as a flashback to what happened, and then you go back and you watch 6. To tie it all together, and then of course the sequel trilogy just happens 30 years after that, so you just watch that after 6. Watch it in that order, especially for someone who has not seen the saga, and I think that's the most entertainment value you can get out of the whole saga.
That's a good
that
list.
order intrigues me. Intrigues me.
I've heard of that called. It's called the Machete Order or something like that.
Yeah, there's been names. I don't know. I came up with it first, so I don't know. They've come up with other names for it, but it was mine.
Claimed.
Nice.
But yeah,
claimed.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Ro,
so let's.
These were the conversations we were talking about, Ro. We all have our preferences. We all have our opinions about Star Wars. We would have had the same conversation back in 1985 about Empire Strikes Back versus Return of the Jedi. But at the end of the day, these are all just our opinions, and we respect those. And at the end of the day, we're all gonna go and watch all the Star Wars movies anyway. So
That's very true.
I'm so glad we had this conversation. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Me
Excellent. Yeah, let's go around the table here and let's find out where people can find you. Kev, you go first.
You guys can find us, the Force Losers podcast, on where Brad Brad knows the technical stuff. I'm just the Twitter guy. You can find me on Twitter at Force_losers. If you're talking to the Force Losers on Twitter, you're talking to me. This guy over here will tell you where you can find the actual podcast.
The actual podcast is going to be on Podbean, Stitcher, iTunes. We're coming on to Google now soon. I'm working on getting us on everywhere else, basically. So for now, that's it, though.
And our YouTube channel.
Yes, and YouTube.
Justice.
You can find us on Twitter at Podwars Podcast. And then you can also go to Anchor and search Podwars, and there you can find us on 9 different sites, including Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever floats your boat when you're streaming podcasts.
Excellent. And
Don't you
Brad,
don't you ask me.
I'm gonna have to email you or ship you a little cheat sheet, a little card there for
We're
you.
everywhere. We're
everywhere. But Brad and I are the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast, and I want to thank you guys for joining us. And Charlie had to leave early, but thank you, Charlie, for joining us as well. We had fun on this discussion. If anybody in the chat wants to leave us a voicemail, we have a Scare of Scuttlebutt hotline. Operators are standing by on the Red 5 network. Media Center. Give us a call, 773-234-8659. Leave us a voicemail. We want to know what's on your mind, and we'll probably play it on our next show, which is coming soon. Isn't it, Brad?
Always.
And again, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you in the chat. We love to interact with you guys. Find us everywhere as well. We are like a bad penny. We are always turning up. But Scare of Podcast on Twitter and all the socials. Ask your smart speaker to play the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast. And make sure you emphasize the word but, because it's funny. But thank you guys. Brad, you had something else to say?
No, I just like the word but.
Okay, excellent. Thank you guys.
Yeah, man.
May the force be with you. And that's the Scuttlebutt. Woohoo!